I want a topo. You're going to Dunkin'. I want a
Welcome to the Online Edge podcast. Lee Shelton, Luke Strukin. Lee's over here ordering his
4 creams,
his
2 sugars, extra
white
large
cappuccino.
Coffee. He doesn't want anything. You don't want anything, do you? He's already
going to this beautiful thing called rain. And that's the intro.
All right, we've been on this series on branding. Jeff Bezos, the CEO, founder of Amazon, has this great quote that brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. And so I want to talk about brand personality a little bit today. This is one of those things the subjects that literal books have been written about. So we're not going to exhaust that in a 15-minute podcast, but we can get the ball rolling where you're beginning to think like that, because there's a lot of decisions that need to be made that all need to be. Brand personality really keeps you cohesive, where you're communicating in a way that is consistent across all platforms, that when you write an email, it's also going to sound like your social media posts. And a brand personality done well will allow you to have multiple members of the team all communicating with the same personality.
Yeah, so that's so important, right? So, I mean, that goes all the way down to the basics of how do you even answer the phone?
Right.
You know?
Yes.
How do you send out an estimate? How do people, if you're a retail space and you have people coming into your location, how do you greet and interact with the client?
Exactly right.
And you see that from businesses that do that really well, like Chick-fil-A.
Yes.
I mean, think about that every single time, my pleasure.
Right. Hey,
welcome to Chick-fil-A. My name's Luke. How can I serve you today?
Every bit of that was built into, and I've said this before on this podcast, but that was my first job at 15 years old was Chick-fil-A. So I went through the training, and shortly after I worked there, they started my pleasure. So that was actually not in existence like day one for me. And then like 2 months in, they literally brought somebody in to walk through that we were doing this and why we were doing this.
Oh, that's awesome. They actually taught you why.
Versus,
hey, this is what we're going to do.
Right. It was a huge part of it because they wanted us to understand the why behind it, because they figured that if we got the why, we would be more consistent at it. And so 15 years old, me and friends and other coworkers learned this unbelievable standard of customer service that really what it was at its core was Chick-fil-A extending its brand personality.
Yeah.
And when you think of fast food restaurants, and it's so funny, they don't even call themselves fast food. They get like managers would correct you if you would say that. They would say quick service.
Yep. And it's impressive how many. I mean, it's the littlest of things with them.
Absolutely it is.
And what's funny to see is how many other companies and businesses have taken, my pleasure and stuff like that to their business because they're trying to replicate that standard of service, right?
I always freak out a little bit when businesses see something that competition's doing and try to implement it just because they see competition doing it.
Agreed.
Because at the end of the day, when we're talking about a brand personality, you don't ever want to take on somebody else's personality. Now you're
conflicting.
Your brand's in an identity crisis.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it.
So when you're sitting down and you're developing a brand personality, if you're the founder, then the brand personality probably needs to look a little bit, probably quite a bit like you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you're sitting down and you're thinking that through, what is your vision for this thing? What does customer service look like from your perspective? So every time I get a chance to, I love working with founders. We work with a lot of people who aren't founders. I love working with founders because there's a passion there for those details that sometimes, not always, but sometimes doesn't exist in other situations. And so I think that sitting down and listening to founders of businesses talk about this stuff, they don't always know the terms. Like if I said brand identity or brand personality, they may not be able to define that.
Yeah.
And yet, because they know this represents me, they have given it away in such a unique way that it's almost intuitive to them. And so creating a system around it just allows you to be even more consistent with it.
Yeah, that's so good. You know, I've heard of companies that they really don't do anything face to face. Everything is over the phone.
Right.
And their saying is if it rings twice, it's for you.
That's really good.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So if somebody doesn't answer that phone call on the first ring, it doesn't matter who it is. The owner himself, if he's off doing something else and he hears that go off the 2 rings, he will answer the phone because their mindset behind customer service is we don't want to make somebody wait.
Really good.
Because it may not even be the fact that somebody's, maybe consciously frustrated with the fact that they're waiting for you to pick up, but subconsciously they're worried about you going, gosh, they won't freaking answer the phone. They never let something go to voicemail.
Well, and the funny thing is a lot of times people don't notice when phones are picked up right away, but they really notice when they're not.
Yeah, that's true.
So
that is very true.
If sometimes a part of a brand personality and part of great customer service, sometimes great customer service means that they don't even notice. So we give examples a lot where we all notice. We notice this stuff that we talked about with Chick-fil-A. We notice a lot of things. Because it's above and beyond. Right, because it's above and beyond.
It's excessive.
But even the standard sometimes, like, hey, there's no way of going, like you can't pick up at a half a ring.
Yeah.
So even, or before the phone rings,
Yeah.
so even sometimes the standard of we're going to nail this every single time, sometimes that can go unnoticed. But if you don't do it, it won't go unnoticed. If you don't do it, it'll be noticed really quickly.
That's true.
And so sometimes it's the intangible things that you do that a customer can't identify. Every single time I call, they pick up on the first ring. And yet it's those subconscious things that a customer or client's going to say, I feel taken care of by these people.
Yes.
They're there when I call. So they might not have counted the rings like you did. But just that extra step, that extra level of above and beyond translates into other things as well. It's more than just pick up on the first ring, or if it's the second ring, it's for you. I love that line. I'd never heard that before.
Yeah, it's when I heard that, I was like, wow, that is good. And they were talking about, like the owner of the company, if he's even off in his office and that phone rings 2 times, he will pick it up and answer because they're so committed to that ideology.
You got it. Yeah.
Then that's what they do.
Yep.
So I was just like, dude, that is awesome.
It's a great concept. And it's also one of those things where it says, we're a team.
Yeah.
So how many times have you been in a business where it's like, hey, it's your turn. No, it's your turn. Hey, can you come and do this? I've literally sat on the other side and seen employees like argue about who's going to serve me in front of me. And you feel
I've seen that happen
I interrupted your day.
Yeah. Am I really that big of a priority?
So you feel like an interruption along the way. But when the company has that much of a commitment to consistency and a commitment to service, it translates through every single thing that they do. So if you're committed to answer on that first ring, other things are there as well.
Yeah.
There's this concept of, hey, if the type of person who's committed to answering on the first ring is also the type of person committed to helping serve you and figure out what the issue is, the thing that you're calling about. So it implies a host of things, and the opposite's also true. If you see employees arguing, let's say you're at a restaurant, this is the one that happened. I've probably had it happen a couple times, but this year I had it happen at a restaurant where two, I won't call out the company, but I want to so bad. 2 employees were going back and forth between who was going to make my sandwich. I'm going to give enough of a stuff where people can figure out who it is without me saying the name of it. And and so there was a little bit of back and forth there, and finally, like, what kind of bread do you want? And I remember thinking in that moment, are your hands clean? I never would have thought of that before.
Yeah,
but because I didn't feel like a priority in this one area, I started questioning everything.
Yeah.
Like, how long has that lettuce been sitting out? And the concept is that at the end of the day, when you feel taken really good care of in one area, you don't question a lot of the other things.
And, I think this goes back to the founder situation. It's so important when people, from multiple standpoints here, but first point being, when you're the founder and you're building something from the ground up, think about the systems and the processes you can put in place that you're doing right now, being the person that's bootstrapping stuff from the ground and probably doing a lot of the brunt of the work. When you're doing those things, like, first of all, think about from a standpoint of, how do I systematize this so that when I replace myself later, this continues and
Correct.
It doesn't fall off the wayside.
So part of that is understanding the why behind it.
Yep.
So I heard a great story about a group of monks who had a cat.
Okay.
Cat is a pet.
Okay.
And this cat shows up, and these monks take unbelievable care of the cat. But one day, the cat was bothering them during morning prayer. And so they took the cat and they tied the cat with a red string to a tree so they could pray in peace. And so years go by, and the cat dies. And so
what kind of story is this?
You'll see. So the group of monks buy another cat, and they tie that cat to the tree while they pray. And years more go by, and it's a new set of monks at this point. Like, the old monks have died away, and the tree dies. The tree falls down. So they plant a new tree so they can tie the cats to the tree so they can pray. Sometimes things become such tradition that we forget the why behind it.
That's true.
To begin with.
Yeah.
And so as a result, we can be doing things that actually don't make sense because we forgot what the why was, and we cannot do things because we didn't know what the why was to begin with, and they were things that really actually did matter.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Is that if you overlook the why, it's really easy, especially for team members, to just be like, "Dude, that's dumb. Why are we doing this?"
Really good.
And then they miss the whole backgrounds of, oh, hey, our customer needs to be served at the highest level possible, you can lose focus on that.
Let me give you a couple of action steps on this, I
wanted to get to one more thing.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so going back to the founders of so many people, when they start businesses, or even if they acquire one or whatever the situation is, maybe they come in as a manager or whatever, and they're in the position to make changes to culture, to all of that kind of stuff, right? Usually the reason for that is that they've had an experience somewhere that was negative, and the whole reason for either starting the business or the idea behind the company itself is to fix a problem.
Yep.
And so that can easily, it's easy to get into it going, hey, this is what I'm going to do to fix the problem, and then completely lose track and get off in the weeds. And the next thing you know is you're doing the same thing that everybody else is doing. So it's so important to get the systems down. To if you're thinking right now, if you're like, hey, I want to start a business, I don't know what it is, think about the things that really bug you with services or businesses that you interact with on a day-to-day basis, and think about, hey, what can I do to make this better for the consumer? If I put a hat on that says I'm the consumer, how do I build a business that services that person to the highest level? And what are the problems that person has? And how do we make that the most enjoyable customer experience as possible?
Really good.
At the end of the day. So what other action steps do you got?
Yeah, so a couple action steps with this, because it's difficult. We can talk about this all day long, but if there's no way of actually implementing it, then it's just kind of interesting talk. So a couple action steps. One, at its core, what kind of personality, how do you want to communicate at every level? So when you're answering customers that are leaving reviews and you're giving an answer to that, what tone and tenor do you want to set with that? Do you want to be fun? Do you want to be, T-Mobile's kind of gone with this like super party almost deal. Like when you call them up, it's upbeat music. It's trendy language. It's that kind of stuff. And that's what they're trying to do. Do you want to be just hyper professional? That's a real way of going and one that a lot of people should take. Do you want to have a little bit of snarkiness to you? That's kind of the Dollar Shave Club type mentality. So figure out, hey, this is my personality. This is something I think that we could continue on with throughout what we do. And through that, list some things. Hey, this is a pattern response for us. You can change this up a little bit to make it sound unique, but at the same time, it needs to sound like us. And so if we get a complaint, it's not going to be the exact same response. We're not copying and pasting here, but we want to get it to a couple things. We want to get to the core of the matter. We want to let them know that we actually do care. We want to invite them to call us, that kind of stuff. But at the same time, where your personality, your brand personality is coming out in everything that you do. And so sometimes that's just sitting down and having an exercise. Maybe you take employees through, hey, if we get this, here's the last 5 times that we did drop the ball a little bit and we got some complaints. Hey, how would you respond to this? Hey, how would you respond to this? Hey, how would you respond to this? Hey, here's how we as a company are going to respond when these kind of things come up. Because we want to stay consistent across the board. We don't want, if they call and this person answers versus this person answers, it's 2 different experiences. We want it to be the same experience with everybody they come in contact with, so that we stay consistent as a brand and so that our brand personality is reaching the type of people that we seek to serve.
So good. Thank you so much for watching. Wherever you check this out, give it a like, give us a subscribe if you're on YouTube. We really appreciate you guys. And if you have a comment, if you have a question about something you would like us to cover in a future episode, please send us a line at info@youronlineedge.com. We appreciate you guys.